Right, today we're going to go through some more Python questions. All right, let's go into www.bebrz.uk and then hit the challenges on the top right corner here. After you've hit the challenges, then we are going to go into navigators. So the two questions we're doing today is same, close, different, and countdown. Okay, so I'm going to open these into different tabs. Same, close, different. Now remember that the questions in these sample questions, they're usually a little easier than the actual exam. Now there are a few examples that I've done that are just as hard or even harder than the exam in my previous replays. I've got something like 200 or 300 replays of previous OUCC classes, and some of those questions don't exist anymore online. So definitely check them out if you want more of a challenge. But today we're going back to basics, okay? Same, close, different. We're going to just brush up on our basic Python, okay? So let's see what this task asks us to do. Write a program that compares two numbers and outputs whether they are the same, close, or different. The two numbers are the same if they are equal to each other. Two numbers are close if they are within one of each other. And the two numbers are different if the difference between them is greater than 1. The difference between them is greater than 1. So two numbers on the separate line. So if you thought about, how we can do this in maths, the first thing you need to know is which are these numbers equal, all right? If the two numbers are equal, then that's easy, all right? But how do we find if they are close or different to each other? Well, you need to use some subtraction. You need to subtract the smaller one from the larger one. And that is the key. That is the key to solving our problem. So here, our input format will be two integers that will come in separate lines. And remember, to access each line, you need to run the input function, the input open and close brackets. Every time you run it, you get the next line. Okay, but these lines come in as strings because all inputs come in as strings. And for us to be able to do any calculations with them to check if they're close or different, then we need to turn them into integers. All right, so here we'll go number 1 equals input. But remember, that's a string, so we're going to turn it into an integer by casting it with int and then putting everything in a bracket. That's going to force everything inside to become the integer data type if possible. Num2 equals int input again because we're getting the second line. Okay. Now that these two numbers are the same, we're going to, are placed as variables. We're going to test if they're equal to each other first. Now that's the easiest part. Okay, so if num1 is equal to num2, remember, if we are testing if something is equal to each other, we need to have two equal signs. Two equal signs. If we're using a single equal sign, that's just assigning that something is equal to something. So we need to make sure that when we're testing, we use two equal signs. If number 1 is equal to number 2, then print same. And then we say elif, or else, actually. Because in here, we're going to check if number 1 is bigger or number 2 is bigger. But also, we need to find the difference. So we're going to create a variable called difference, and we only use it for when the numbers are not the same. Else, if num1 is bigger than num2, then difference will equal to num1 minus num2. Right? If number 1 is bigger than num2, then we take num2 away from num1. Else, difference equals num2 minus num1. Okay? So now we store the difference. This is only if these numbers are not the same. After that, we check what the difference is. If difference is equal to 1, then print close. Okay, because we're very close to it. Else if the difference is bigger than 1, then we print different. Okay. So check this out. We first set two variables, num1 and num2, and then we force them to become integers so that we can work out differences between them later on. We also set a difference variable here to none, just in case the numbers are not equal, in which case we're going to have to find what the difference is. If number 1 is equal to number 2, we'll print the same. Else, we check if number 1 is bigger than number 2, in which case the difference will equal num1 minus num2. Otherwise, the difference will equal num2 minus num1. And then at the end, if the difference is equal to 1, we print close, and else we print different. Actually, this can only happen inside this else statement. Because if I put it outside, then it's going to run it all the time, and we don't want that. We only want it to run same if the numbers are the same, and then ignore all of this block. Otherwise, it goes into this block in depth. Submit the code, and let's put our fingers crossed, and we have a full score, 4 out of 4. Okay, you see how we broke down this question bit by bit and made sure that we weren't making any silly mistakes. A lot of Python is to do with manipulating numbers and making sure that our flow of logic is sound. All right, let's go on to the next one. If you have any questions, by the way, if you have any comments or questions or want me to go through something in more detail, make sure you comment in the comment section below or send me a text. All right, the final one today is countdown. Write a program that displays a rocket countdown sequence starting from a given number. At the end of the countdown, display the words liftoff. Now, the input format is going to be a whole number from 1 to 100. And then our output is going to be one number at a time, followed by the final line liftoff. Now, if the number is 3, we need to say countdown equals int input. That gets our initial number straight away. And of course, it is an integer because counting down from a number is what we need. Because if I had the letter 3 as in a string, it's not going to be useful for me later on. And you're going to see why. Now, as soon as I see that there's a sequence of numbers like this, 3, 2, 1, or 1, 2, 3, or any kind of pattern that is increasing or decreasing, your mind should immediately think a for loop. Okay? Because a for loop will help you count from one number to another. And also, if you want, you can optionally choose the step in which it counts as well. So here we go for I in range. And then how does this for loop work? Well, we've got to start with 3, right? So start with countdown. And then we end with 0. Now, I tell you why 0, not 1. Because if we, when you put those numbers into range function, the second number is exclusive. It goes to that number, but it does not include that number. So the first number is the countdown number inclusive, so it's 3, it starts at 3. And then it counts until 0, but it ignores 0. It excludes 0. And then the step size is -1. So it's going to count from 3, then 2, then 1, then ignore 0. If the number was 100, it would go from 100 to 99, 98, 97, and so forth. For I in range countdown. Okay, so what happens, what is going to happen in here? It's going to repeat this, whatever I put in here, print some number, right? But instead of printing some number, I actually turns into this iterator. And remember, I can be anything. It could be like foo if I wanted to, right? But I, for I in range, is just a standard way of making a for loop. So if I print I, then in the first iteration, I will equal to whatever the countdown number is, this first number inclusive. And then we're going to print I. Okay, so I is going to start with countdown equal to 3, if input is 3. Then it's going to say we're counting towards 0 in steps of -1. So in the next iteration, I will become 2. Then we print number 2. Then I equals 1, and then we print number 1. After the end of this loop, we print liftoff. Okay? Super simple. If you run this code, it should be okay. Full score, 4 out of 4. Okay? Remember, every time you see a pattern, some kind of sequence, your mind should immediately think about a for loop, especially if it is a number that is going to be limited. As soon as you can see, this is going to count from 3, 2 to 1, and then lift off, right? If you were going to count a sequence, but you are not sure when it ends, you will have to use a while loop. And you can check out my tutorials on while loops in some of my previous classes. That's it from me today. I hope you had fun with Python. I will see you again next week. Bye-bye.